you who just got here between last lesson and this lesson, we've kind of been talking about the American dream, which is you can do whatever you want to if you just do it, versus what it means to be a Christian, okay? As far as, our power versus God's power. And I want to tell you right now, He's given a lot of you just absolutely beautiful voices. That last song was amazing. And I pray that you use that for good, because that was awesome. So anyways, that's kind of where we've been. And that's where we're headed as well in the next few lessons. Here's the situation. We all have blind spots in our lives. Now, I'm not talking about little spots like you can't see, like somebody coming at you like a football and then it hits you in the face like, I do see coming. I'm talking about that kind of blind spot. I'm not talking about, you're driving along and you pull over in front of somebody because you didn't see them, they were in your blind spot. I'm talking about in our personal lives, there are things in our lives that we have a hard time seeing. Okay? Sometimes they are very obvious to the people around us. Okay? Sometimes they're just our personal things, but we don't deal well with them. Jesus talked about this. He says, you look at the speck of dust in your neighbor's like, oh, you got a little something right here. Let me get that for you. But you don't realize you've got this big plank sticking out of your own eye. You understand what I'm saying? You see the very small things in other people's lives, and you've got this big thing you're dealing with, and you don't deal with it before you go to talk to somebody else. You've got this big piece of wood sticking out of your face, and hit somebody in their face trying to get the little piece of dust out of their eye. Jesus talked about that. One of the things, when I was about 23, Jake was around 2 years old, and I had my own place. I had my own full-time job. I was a manager at Gordon Food Service, which is where we get all this awesome food that we've been eating this weekend. And I was more surviving than thriving. Okay? I was getting along, I was making money, I was supporting my kid, and I was surviving life. And my dad, let me tell you this, no matter how old you are, when one of your parents says, we need to talk, never a positive experience. At least you don't anticipate it being a positive experience. My mom just did that to me this week. It scared the poo out of me. I was like, she texted me this. She's like, hey, make sure you get home early enough time with your dad and I need to talk to you. And I'm like, what? What did I do wrong? They're like, and then I said, is this like just a good talk or like a we need to talk? And I put it in quotes, like, we need to talk. And she just sent me a smiley face. I'm like, what does that mean? I don't know what that means. Does that mean she's like evilly laughing at me, like, ha ha ha? Or does that mean like, oh, just don't forget about it? So anyways, I don't even know why I'm telling the story. I'm telling the story to get to another story, so just stay with me. So anyways, it ended up being a positive thing. But I was with Emmy, we were picking up the kids and taking them back to the house, and so we got back, she's like, you need to go, don't you? I'm like, yeah, I can't, I gotta know what she's talking about. So I went to home, and she's making actually what we're eating for dinner tonight, and we're just small talk. I hate small talk, okay? Don't ask me how the weather is. Now, if it's beautiful, it's a beautiful day. Yes, it is. Let's talk about something that matters. That's just how I am. And she's making small talk, and finally I'm like, what is going on? And she's like, we just want you to know that if you and Emmy ever break up, we're keeping her, not you. And I'm like, oh, okay, so you like Emmy, that's good. But anyways, I told that story to get to this story. When I was 23, my dad said, we gotta talk. He shows up at my house, and we sit down at the kitchen table. That was our kitchen table growing up that I kind of inherited. That's kind of what you do when you move out on your own for the first time. You kind of piece together things. And he sits down at the table, and I sit down there, and I'm like, hey, what's up? He's like, you are not who I raised you to be. And I'm like, ugh. Smack across the face, kind of thing. He's like, you're angry at everybody. You're not nice to people. The way you treat your mother is horrible. You're not doing good things with Jake. And your life sucks right now. And I'm like, oh. Man, that's tough to hear. Now, it took a while to get out of that funk, but I did eventually. But I remember that talk, that was 15 years ago, you know, and I remember that to this day. There are certain times in life when you're confronted with things that people need to talk to you about. Those are never, ever easy conversations for either side. If you're doing the confrontation, you don't want to talk to that person about, hey, you really need to stop this because that just ain't right. You don't want to do that. It's difficult. And you definitely don't want to hear, you're messing up, this is how, you need to quit. That's a hard conversation to have. Jesus had it with people all the time. You know, if you look back at our history, one of the things if you look at our nation's history, kind of a blind spot in our nation's history was slavery. You know, here you have these people calling themselves Christians, owning people, and using Scripture to say, yeah, slavery is a good thing. What? No. It's not. You know, we look back at that 150 years ago or so, about 160 or however many now, and think, man, that was just stupid. How could we ever do that? You know, 150 years from now, what are people going to look back at us and think, man, that was stupid. Why were they doing that? You know, and I hope that I'm living my life now, not necessarily then, I'm hoping I'm living my life now to a point where it's transparent enough that you know, I don't have that big plank sticking out of my eye as I stand up here and tell you guys about stuff in your eyes. But you know, that's kind of where we're at. Part of our sinful nature is basically we see what we want to. Okay, we see what we want to. We see what we want to in our own lives. We see what we want to in other people's lives. Sometimes they've got one thing that they're dealing with, and they've got all these positive things in their lives, and we want to focus on the negative. Okay? Some people are inherently negative people. Have you ever been around one of those? Maybe you are one of those. It's not fun. So if you don't have a lot of friends, maybe you're that person. I don't know. But it's fun to be around somebody like Courtney, who's just positive all the time and has a good time. Courtney's here, ladies and gentlemen. It's fun to be around somebody like that because he's positive. But part of our sinful nature doesn't let us see things the way they really are. We see things the way we want them to be. Okay? Maybe that's in a relationship that you're in. Remember that if you're not in relationships now, we've got a lot of young people here. If somebody tells you you need to break up with them, they are the worst thing in the world for you. Listen to them. Because they can see things that your love is masking. Okay? Your love is masking. It's a lot easier for people to see things, and people see things a lot sooner than you. Okay? Because of your love or whatever. So our sinful nature kind of masks that in us. One area that Americans have a blind spot to is poverty. Okay? I like lessons that are practical. This is going to be kind of a practical lesson. There are about 6.5 billion people on the planet. 1 billion of them live on less than $1 a day. I was going to say I have that in my pocket. I don't. My other pocket, I have $11. That's enough for 11 people. There's a thing, it's called Mission Possible, based out of Finley, that does mission work. And they feed a child, is it like $20, $22, $25? And that feeds a child for 30 or 40 days in the Dominican. Yet we in America, you know, I feel bad preaching this and then eating what we're about to eat tonight. You know, we had double doozies for lunch. That's sorry for those of you who missed that. But you know, I kind of feel bad talking about that. Another 2 billion live on less than $2 a day. That's half of the world living on less than what we can find in our car console in change a day. Now, we do that because we're not always confronted with it. You know, we don't watch commercials anymore, so when that sad Sarah McLachlan song comes on with the kid with the flies around his eyes and stuff, now I'm painting a picture here, not trying to make fun, but Yeah. But you get my point. When that comes on, we just DVR and fast forward through it. And if we see it, we're like, man, that really sucks. And we go get our bag of Doritos and fill our face. You know, it was told, we've been talking about back in the day a lot. Well, back in the day, you know, the phrase was, you don't eat your dinner, starving kids in China that love that food. I don't know why I went southern there, but the reality is I'm not going to box up my leftovers and send them to China. However, we do live in abundance in America. Even the poorest people in America will be the richest people in other parts of the world. You know, and that's something that we really need to be aware of in our lives. So, you know, we talked about the Great Commission, which is what Jesus' last words on this planet were go tell people about me. Okay? But in doing that, we don't need to just tell people about Jesus. We need to live it out. We need to show people Jesus. Okay? See, you went on a mission trip this summer, right? How many of you other guys from Christ Church did that? Did anybody else go on a mission trip? A couple other people? Okay. What did you do on that mission? Where did you go and what did you do on a mission trip?
We went to South Dakota, the Sioux Indian Reservation, and we did construction work.
Okay.
We built things for them, or gardens, or...
Okay. Did you have a chance to have like a church type of thing? Or okay, so you didn't just go to tell them, hey, Jesus is great. You showed them.
Yes, we invited them to come back and worship with us,
Right.
eat with us.
Exactly. It's about showing people. Okay? You know, you go to a ball game in Cincinnati or Cleveland or Detroit or wherever you go, or you walk in big cities, and there's always somebody with a change cup needing change. We have a hard time in America with that because some people have abused that and make their living that way, honestly, and live better than a lot of other people do. However, we use that as an excuse to keep on walking without don't make eye contact, don't make eye contact. Just keep, look out, just keep walking. You know, we walk by and say, you know, God bless you, or whatever. And it's like, really? Maybe God wants to bless you through you. Maybe it's you that needs to bless them so they see God in you. So it's not just telling people about Jesus, it's about showing them Jesus. And we can do that in lots of different ways, whether it's building schools and churches in the Dominican Republic, or whether it's going to Haiti after the big earthquake they had and helping that, or whether it's just going to New Orleans after the hurricane and helping there, or even New York City. There are still people. Remember that big storm went through New York? There are still people that are homeless because of that. That happened last year about this time, was it? About a year ago?
It's in November.
November. 11 months ago, and there are still people without homes. Do you hear that on the news anymore? No. Are there any dial this number and text this number and it donates $10 to them anymore? No. We do it for 2 weeks and think that solves the problem. We need to show people Jesus. All right. The Bible is full of verses about the poor and how we should treat them and what we should do. It's not just about the holidays or special events or special tragedies. You know, so many times at the holidays we take our youth groups and we go to the homeless shelter and we feed them a meal. Wow, there's 360 some other days a year. What do you do in that? I mean, that's great that at Thanksgiving or Christmas you're providing them with a big meal. And you're doing a service project. And I know this is a great feel-good lesson, but we're getting real here. Maybe we should go on August 15th. Randomly picked that date, but maybe we should go on October 12th. You know, I was trying to figure out a way to do something like that this weekend, but the logistics of travel and stuff, and I don't have your parents' permission to take you anywhere but here. But you know, that's something we need to think about, youth leaders doing. You know, a lot of times we box things up for Christmas. You know, we do shoe boxes for people. And we go to the dollar store and we buy the cheapest stuff possible to put in. Are you helping? Yeah. But the problem with our society, and even in Jesus' time, because he preached about that, we're going to get to that in a second. The problem is we give people the scraps and the leftovers. Now, those people are probably pretty excited about that because if it wasn't for scraps, they would have nothing. When was the last time, you're just giving a random gift, filling a shoebox, and instead of 10 $1 items, you put 10 $10 items? And that's the kind of thing. Now, Jesus talked about this, and like I said, we're going to get to that in just a second, but it's not just about the special events here and the special time. The example is always there. Here's the situation. We cannot ever, regardless of what the topic is, pick and choose from God's Word what we want to implement. All denominations across the world, and we have a lot of different types of churches in here tonight, do this. Some do it with spiritual gifts. Some do it with roles of women. Some do it with how they can have church. Some do it with where they can have church. Some do it with, what kind of cars you can drive, or maybe you have to have a horse and buggy because cars are evil. What? What in the Bible makes you think that you should stop at the 1800s? I just don't think that. But we cannot pick and choose what Jesus talks about to say, yeah, we're going to really focus on that, and that over there, yeah, he said it, but this is kind of important. He speaks about the poor almost more than he speaks about anything else in the Bible. Like I said, we look back at slavery and think, man, how could those people be so blind to that? But maybe 150 years from now, people look back, I talked about there's more people living in poverty in the United States now than there was 20 years ago, than there was 10 years ago. Maybe people are going to look back on us 150 years from now and think, they lived in houses that, a cheap house is $100,000. They drove cars that cost $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. They spent how much on lunch every week? How much they spend on coffee? Sorry, I see it home with some people. And yet, they have that many people living without. Let's hope that our society gets to that point where that's not an issue. I see it getting worse before it gets better. But, maybe that's something that they look back on and say, they called themselves Christians and they had slaves. They called themselves Christians and they didn't take care of the people that were around them. Let's look at Luke. Uh-oh. This might be a problem. Let me see. Let me figure out what chapter it is first. Yeah, Luke chapter 19, starting in verse 18. For those of you who have your Bible. By the way, if you come to an event, one of mine, Ryan Beeson's Teen Week, Ryan Beeson's Fall Retreat, Ryan Beeson's Spring Retreat, we got to get more creative with the names of these things. Yeah, I'm not creative. You know that. Read your Bibles. It's, that's, like I said, that's what it's all about. All right. Verse 18, a certain ruler asked Jesus, "Good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" That's not what I want to read. I want to read... Nope, that's it. That sounded familiar to something we read earlier, but this happened a lot. All right, verse 19, "Why do you call me good?" Jesus answered. "No one is good except God alone. You know the commandments. Do not commit adultery, do not murder, do not steal, do not give false testimony," which is lying. "Honor your father and your mother." And he says, "All these I have kept since I was a boy." When Jesus heard this, he said to him, "You still lack one thing. Sell everything you have and give to the poor, and you will have your treasures in heaven." This is not what I want. Daggone it. It's 19. I wrote the verses down, but I didn't write the chapter down. Let me just tell you the story. Here it is. Chapter 16. Chapter 16, verse 19. That's what it was. It was not chapter 19. Chapter 16. Little, and just upside down. All right, here we go. There was a rich man. There was a rich man. There was a rich man who dressed in purple, which, by the way, that was a big deal back then. Purple. Okay. Who dressed in purple and fine linen and lived in luxury every day. This is Jesus telling a story, by the way. At his gate lay a beggar named Lazarus, covered with sores and longing to eat what fell from the rich man's table. Remember the whole scraps I was talking about? He just wanted some scraps. Even the dogs came and licked his sores. Disgusting. All right. The time came when the beggar died, and the angels carried him to Abraham's side, which is heaven. The rich man also died and was buried in hell, where he was in torment. He looked up and saw Abraham far away with Lazarus by his side. So he called to him and said, Father Abraham, you have many sons. Father Abraham, have pity on me and send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, because I am in agony in this fire. But Abraham replied, Son, remember that in your lifetime you received your good things, while Lazarus received bad things, but now he is comforted here, and you are in agony. And besides all this, between us and you is a great chasm that has been fixed, so that those who want to go from here to you cannot, nor anyone can cross over. He answered, Then I beg you, Father, send Lazarus to my father's house, for I have 5 brothers. Let him warn them, so that they will not also come to this place of torment. So basically, here's the situation. The guy, the rich guy, had a lot of stuff. Lazarus was at his house, right in front of him, every day, hoping that he'd get the trash that they threw away, that they didn't want because they were so full. And they said, oh, I don't want these leftovers. When they died, the rich man ended up going to hell. Not because he was rich, but because he was greedy. He didn't bless people around him. There is absolutely nothing wrong. And Jesus never says anything about being wrong, about having material possessions. He said, however, it's very difficult for you to have those things and still worship me, because you know what? You end up worshiping those things instead of me. And you're not using them for what you need to use them for. So that's the story about the rich and the poor there. This is why Jesus said, remember the whole hump day camel thing? We said it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle, and some people say that was a gate in Jerusalem or whatever. Whatever. It's still the same. It's not happening. You know, I can see this little lady, this camel's tail, just trying to like thread the needle into the camel. It's not happening. He didn't say it was impossible. Maybe it's a big needle. I don't know. He didn't say it was impossible, but he said it's very difficult because it's not about the money. It's about the fact that they're worshiping that stuff, and that becomes their goal and what they're straining for. Now, here's the thing. When we do give people our leftovers, when we do that gift box and a shoe box, and we give them, $5 or $10 $1 items, we think, I did a great thing today. We go home, we wrap that present up, we set it off, and man, we did great things for kids in Haiti. And then they play with them and they fall apart in a day. You know? And my grandmother's sister, which was my mom's aunt, every year at Christmas, okay, she would get all of us grandchildren, which are her like second nieces, one or whatever, would get us these gifts. And when one person opened it, we all knew what we were all getting. The question was, what was the color? Because she always got us different colors. But it was always like that styrofoam plane that you threw down the hallway 3 times and it hit the ceiling fan and it was done. Yeah. It was always that gift that didn't last to the trip home from Christmas. And we made fun of it because it was ridiculous. Save your 30 cents, because back then it was cheaper. Save your 30 cents and do something else with it. Don't insult me with this gift. And she was so proud because she got us all something. She was so stingy with her money, and that's a whole other story. But she was so proud in that moment that she saw us playing with these things, but we were totally mocking her the whole time. You know, trying to destroy this gift as fast as possible to see if we could set some new land speaker. You know, it's like, yeah, it's gone. All right, I was first. You know, and so we mocked her and made fun of her, and every year she's like, oh, that's so awesome. and it was just like, no, it's not. And that's what God sees our gifts, not only to the poor, but to Him. We give Him the scraps and the leftovers. And that's what it's really about. If we're not willing to do for the least of these on this earth, what are we willing to do for Him? If we won't give somebody, you know, I'm getting way ahead of myself. What I'm just going to do. I have notes. For those of you who have seen me preach at camp, I have a 3x5 card with 3 things on it. This is way too many to stay focused. I can't do it. You know, there's a friend of mine. Laura, how many years has it been since Marcus? 3? Okay. A friend of mine and Laura's and some other people in Cincinnati, his name was Marcus. And this guy was one of the most giving people I've ever known. He went to school, to college in Nashville. And they had different games and things. They had minor league baseball teams, and they had, you know, hockey and stuff. And so something that they would do in college was go to minor league baseball games. They're cheap to get into, like $5 or $10. It was good entertainment for college kids. And I'll never forget, he actually passed away 3 years ago at the age of like 26 or 27. Yeah, 27. He was on his bike in New York City and was hit by a car, or a truck actually, and passed away. But one of the stories that was told at his funeral was this. Nobody knew because it wasn't about people knowing. Before these games, they would have to leave early so that he could run by and pick up a bag of cheeseburgers. Because he knew the homeless people by name. He knew their stories, how they got to be where they were, and why they were in the situation they were. It's one thing to throw some spare change in a cup. It's another thing to buy food and take it to them and say, hey, Steve, how's it going today? That's Jesus lived out. If we are not willing to do that for God's people, how can we possibly be willing to do that for God? We give Him our scraps. Most of us give Him an hour a week, at best. Sunday mornings. Maybe a Wednesday night Bible study, there's 2 hours. If you do a youth group thing on the weekend that lasts a couple hours, okay, let's say 5 hours total. For the week. Quick, anybody, how many hours are in a week? 24 times 7. That's 8, carry the 2, 14, 168. 168 hours, you're giving them 5. That's less than, what, 3%? I told you, get a minute. Less than 3% of your time is going to God, and you think, I'm going to Sunday morning, Wednesday night, and youth group on the weekend. I'm doing a lot. 3%? God in the Old Testament asked for 10%. That would be like 17 hours a week. That's a lot. I don't have that kind of time. Really? We're giving God our scraps, people. It needs to be better than that. We need to learn to focus on things that matter. Have anybody ever seen that show, Rabbits? Have you seen it? Anybody? It's a show for younger kids. But it's the most ridiculous. There's no dialogue. It's these like alien rabbits that they call rabbits. And they just go, wah, wah. And they're discovering things on, it's the most ridiculous show that our children watch for hours upon hours. many like to play video games? Video games. Oh, lots of people. What would you say in an average day, how much, and I'm going to ask a few people this, how many hours a day do you spend playing video games?
Mostly all day.
Mostly all day. How much do you spend?
On an average, about 3.5.
3.5 hours. Does anybody have limits? Your parents give you limits on how much you play. Sean, how much are you allowed to play video games a day? 1 hour a day. Okay? That's a good mother right there, by the way. Anybody else? Do you have limits?
Yeah. Like an hour and a half.
Hour and a half. We are wasting time on things that don't matter. I'm going to blow your mind. Video games don't matter. Just blow, it's we're going to have your mind. Get them out. Don't lose so many minds. Guys, I'm telling you. I like entertainment as much as anybody. I probably spend, I don't spend an hour and a half watching or doing video games, but you know what? I'll spend an hour and a half watching a game. Probably 3 hours, closer to. It's a game. It's baseball. There's 162 at least of them a year. Every day. I'm almost like, another one? I'm like, every day. Every day? Sometimes every day. So, it's like, we need to really seriously focus, and maybe this is what you get from this lesson, and this is nowhere the direction I was headed with this, but we're going there anyways, because that's where God appears to be taking us. We need to see what gets our scrap time and what gets our main time. We just heard, okay, the best situation is your parents let you play an hour a day. Okay? That's the best. Now we said the good youth group person was spending 5 hours a week at youth group. An hour a day is 7. We are spending more time on video games. The best kids are spending more time on video games than we are with God. Are video games wrong or bad? Well, some, but no, in general. No, it's entertainment. It's fun. I would love to know what Jesus did for entertainment. Like walking on water. It's like, I'm going to really freak him out this time. It's like, stuff like that. Oh, yeah, you think that's bad? Watch this. Get up. All right, he did, that's cool, And this guy never walked his life. Hey, he'll walk. Okay, here we go. That's entertaining. But look at what matters in your life, okay? Take an inventory of how you're spending your time and how you're spending your efforts, okay? And a lot of you don't have money at this point, but you have a lot of other things to give, okay? And maybe you can't go to North Dakota but once a year. Was that trip free? And if you didn't raise the money, who paid for it?
I didn't go.
You wouldn't have gone. Maybe you can't go, was 1,600? Is that how much it was? Yeah. Maybe you can't go because you don't have that money, but you know what? You can serve your mother. You can serve your teacher at school. That may take 5 or 10 minutes. Then you get back to your video games. How are we spending our time? How are we spending our resources? It's not because at this point in your life, you don't have a lot of resources. There's not a whole lot you own. Your parents gave you everything at this point. Okay? I said some of you. You may not have a lot of physical resources. But you know what you do have a lot of? 168 hours a week of time. How are you spending that time? A great thing that we talk about, Mark, a great thing that Laura and the Central group does is every Wednesday they have a community meal where they feed a lot of people in the community, 50 to 100 usually, 50 to 100 people that may not have had a meal that week like that. They do that every week. That takes 3 hours. Yeah, 3 hours. Again, 168, 3. It's a small portion. But they wouldn't have to do that. Their church wouldn't have to do that every week. That's an expense for them. But they've made a commitment to their community They're going to shoot. Remember what I said? It's not just about telling people about Jesus, which they also do. It's about showing people Jesus. You can't always buy people cheeseburgers, but you can always show them how much you care. I am nowhere close to what I was going to talk about. Man, that's where it went. Okay? It's not just about the poor monetarily. Okay? It's not just about the people in physical poverty. It's about the people in emotional poverty. It's about the people in spiritual poverty. The people that don't have much spiritually. You may not have much money, but man, maybe you're a giant in your community spiritually. Maybe in your youth group you're a leader. Man, you can do so much with that. So much. So my encouragement after this lesson, I always try to leave you with something positive. Because we've gotten kind of serious in this one, and it kind of may have hit home a little bit about, man, maybe all day on video games is not a good use of my time. What are you going to do with your time? What are you going to do with what you have? Again, you may not have a whole lot right now. I'll end it with this. All my life, God has provided. Okay?